Are today's teenagers really struggling, or are they more resilient than we think? Teen psychologist Lisa Damour argues it's the latter, and understanding this balance is more important than ever. But here's where it gets complicated. Teens face unprecedented stressors, yet they continually demonstrate remarkable strength and adaptability. Curious to learn what makes today's youth tick? Keep reading. On a warm summer afternoon in Washington, D.C., Theo Guerin, a producer for TED Radio Hour, strolled along the National Mall, stopping teens from all over the country to ask one simple question: what's stressing you out right now? The responses poured in quickly and covered familiar territory. Overwhelming amounts of homework, stealing precious sleep, anxiety about climate change and rising sea levels, financial worries about bills and housing, and the constant pressure of social media likes and online validation. It was a growing, recognizable list, touching on school struggles, money troubles, environmental fears, and the challenge of fitting in both online and in real life. But then Guerin asked a follow-up. How do you handle these pressures? That's when the tone shifted. One young person shared how biking with their dad and going fishing helped soothe their mind. Another found joy and focus in coding classes. Some confessed they were intentionally cutting back on social media, while others expressed excitement about what awaits them after graduation. The stress is undeniably intense, but so is their resilience. This complex mix of vulnerability and strength perfectly captures modern adolescence. Enter Lisa Damour, a clinical psychologist who has dedicated nearly 30 years to listening to and working with teenagers. She's also a best-selling author and widely recognized authority on adolescent mental health. In an interview with NPR's Manoush Samarati, Damour outlined how life for teens has evolved over the past decade, and it's sobering. Social media platforms now employ highly sophisticated algorithms designed to capture attention and often distort young people's self-image. The COVID-19 pandemic magnified feelings of isolation and anxiety. Expectations for achievement in school and extracurriculars have soared to new heights. At the same time, shifting cultural norms around gender, body image, and identity challenge adults to change how they communicate with teens. Yet, despite these mounting challenges, Damour emphasizes that today's teens remain incredibly curious, intelligent, and resilient. Teenagers today are more conscious of the political and social world around them than ever before, she explains. They're ready to question and challenge the status quo. They make compelling arguments. Here's a critical insight from Damour. Teenagers often live up to the expectations set for them, or down to them. In other words, labeling teens as fragile, lazy, or overly dependent on phones can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But if we approach them as thoughtful, aware individuals, capable of grappling with real-world issues, they tend to rise to the occasion. When it comes to guiding teens through life's difficulties, Damour champions open, respectful, and genuinely interested conversations. Let's unpack some of her advice on how to discuss tricky topics with young people. Talking about social media. Social media algorithms have grown increasingly complex, often pulling teens into endless scrolling loops that can interfere with essential activities like sleep or face-to-face interaction with friends and family. But Damour cautions against banning social media outright. Instead, she suggests setting reasonable boundaries to help teens stay safe and balanced, like no social media use just before bedtime or limiting exposure to age-inappropriate content. She also reminds us that not every moment needs to be productive. Teens work harder in school today than most of us ever did, she says, and they deserve, and actually need, some time for mindless entertainment. Damour encourages parents to have honest conversations, asking questions like, do you feel like your online time fits well with everything else you need to do? Or are you spending more time scrolling than you want? This approach fosters awareness without creating judgment or conflict. Talking about mental health. More teens today are willing to discuss their emotional well-being openly and seek therapy. Yet, at the same time, social media has popularized mental health terminology such as ADHD, trauma, or neurodivergence in broad and sometimes inaccurate ways. Damour urges adults to approach kids' self-diagnoses with curiosity, showing genuine interest while helping teens discern between normal emotional ups and downs and more serious mental health concerns. There's a common misconception by people of all ages that mental health means always feeling good, she explains. But feeling uncomfortable or upset sometimes is a normal and natural response to life's challenges. For example, when a teen experiences a breakup, it's healthy for them to feel sad or hurt. The key is learning how to cope with these feelings, not avoiding them entirely. Her work often focuses on helping families accept that distress is part of life and teaching teens to manage it in healthy, harmless ways so they can navigate bad days without becoming overwhelmed. Addressing big existential fears like climate anxiety. Climate change is a major source of existential fear for many teenagers. They sometimes voice feelings of hopelessness, asking questions like, why bother if the planet is already in crisis? Damour notes that while existential questions aren't new for teens, what's different now is that climate fears are rooted in very real global challenges widely acknowledged by society. Rather than dismiss or minimize these concerns, adults can empower teens by encouraging proactive steps that give them a sense of agency. Actions that might not solve everything, but offer meaningful contribution. I tell my children, we don't know what the future holds, but you'll likely face less suffering than many others. Your responsibility is to reduce suffering where you can, Damour says. Focusing on caring for others helps provide purpose and resilience. This is the second installment in our series. Are the kids all right? If you're interested, you can listen to part 1 for more insights. This episode of TED Radio Hour was produced by Harsha Nahata and Theo Garin, with editing by Sanaz Meshkinpour, Vachel Faulkner-White, and Manoush Somarodi. The digital story was crafted by Harsha Nahata. So what do you think? Is the narrative around teens today too bleak? Or do these challenges reflect real concerns we need to address more thoughtfully? Where do you stand on the role social media plays in adolescent mental health? And how should adults balance concern with respect for teens' autonomy? We invite you to share your thoughts and join the conversation below.